Good afternoon. I'm here with John Quinesso. He is a World War II Navy vet. John, could you share with everyone what year you were born?
I was born in the year 1926. I was born in Vineland, New Jersey. I grew up in this town, lived here all my life.
So, what was it like growing up in Vineland, New Jersey?
Well, Vineland was just like a closely knit town of 30,000 people. Everybody knew everybody. So it was Americana. It was like America.
What were some of your fondest memories? What was life like as a teenager growing up here? What were some of the things you did?
Well, I wouldn't want to elaborate on a lot of the things I did, but anyway, I played the sports in high school. I varsityed in basketball and baseball, and growing up in the hometown of Vineland was just like any other town in America.
Did you have brothers or sisters?
No, I had a sister who died when she was young, so I was the only child.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Yes.
And your parents, were they raised in Vineland as well?
My parents are both Vinelanders, yes.
Okay. So, and at one point you mentioned that you were raised by your grandmother.
Yes, my parents divorced, and my dad took me to my grandmother and grandfather, and they raised me.
Okay, also in Vineland.
Yes, in Vineland.
So, around the age of 18, you enlisted, and what made you decide to enlist in the Navy?
Well, back in '43, the war was raging, World War II, and all my classmates were enlisting into the service. I didn't want to go into the Army because I didn't think I was fit for the Army. So I said, I'm going to go up to Philadelphia and join the Navy, which I did. And that was the best thing I did in my life.
So you say it was the best thing. Do you think it provided you with more opportunities than you would have had if you didn't enlist and stayed in Vineland?
Well, let me put it this way. I went into the Navy as a young, immature, young teenager, and the Navy made me come out as a mature, grown-up young man.
What were some of the things that you learned, even before you went overseas, that you felt helped you mature?
Discipline. The Navy was strictly disciplined, which helped you throughout your Navy career.
So you served beginning at age 18. Where did you do your training?
I did my training in Sampson, New York, boot camp. Came out of there, went to radio school. From radio school, I picked up a ship in Charleston, South Carolina. And from there, we went overseas to Pearl Harbor.
So what was going on in Pearl Harbor at the time you were there?
The war was raging in the Pacific. At that time, our military was making plans for the future invasion of Japan. So we had to do a lot of island hopping to get our naval bases established on various islands in the Asiatic Pacific, such as Guam, Okinawa, Saipan, and so forth.
So were you involved in combat while you were over there?
Well, let me put it this way. I'm no Navy hero. We were involved in, our flotilla was usually the third or fourth wave into the island. After the island was secured, we went in with tanks, men to refurbish the whatever materials that were needed to secure the island. And believe me, let me tell you, when I seen the devastation of the first wave that hit those islands, I just could imagine what those young men went through to secure those islands.
So how long did you spend overseas? Two years, you said?
Approximately 2 years, yes.
And how long were you at Pearl Harbor?
Pearl Harbor was our home base.
Okay.
We used to go back to Pearl to pick up tanks, men, other supplies to bring to these islands after they were secured, in preparation of preparing air landing strips for our planes to land so that they can island hop to the bombing of Japan.
So what combat did you see over there?
Well, the combat I seen was like I said, we were the third or fourth wave. So after we went in, the islands were pretty much taken. So we were just refurbishing the islands with tanks, men, and artillery. But we could see the devastation that must have went on those first landings.
And what was the date that you came back stateside during the war? Roughly a year.
1946, I believe.
1946. So how did you react to some of the crucial things that happened during World War II during that time? What did you learn, and how did you feel about the things that you learned during the war?
I didn't have too much. I was just a young boy. I was just a youngster, and I didn't have much thought one way or the other. I was just glad that we won the war.
So were there any things that took place during World War II that you disagreed with, as far as moves that our country or other countries made?
No, I didn't have any feelings at all at that time. Like I say, I was just a youngster doing my duty on the ship. I was a radio operator, and I can tell you one event that sticks in my mind. We were sitting off the coast of Guam, preparing for the invasion of Japan. All the men were uptight, especially the men who were married with family and kids at home. And I was a youngster with these men. I was the youngest boy on the ship, and I could see that the tightness that they were in. But I was on duty in the radio shack, the midnight shift, and I'll never forget it. I took the message that the Japanese had surrendered, and what a delight that was. I ripped that message off, ran it down to the captain, told him, "Captain, I have an important message." I banged on his door. It was midnight, and you know what he said? "It better damn well be important. You just woke me up."
Oh my goodness, that is
And
funny.
I said, "Well, it is important." Well, he read the message, and I'm telling you, all hell broke loose. He hit general quarters, announced it. "Now hear this, the war is over." And those men, I could still see them jumping out of their cots and their skivvies, kissing each other and hugging each other. It was a delightful moment for me as a youngster, but I could just relate that to the men who were married with families back home.
So when you came home, where were you stationed?
When I came home, I went to Lido Beach, New York, and was discharged.
And then where did you go from there?
Where did I go from there? I came back to Vineland. I went to school under the GI Bill and got my accounting certificate and pursued a career in accounting.
And how many years did you work as an accountant?
Oh. Well, I worked 3 or 4 years as an accountant with a CPA firm, and then I took an exam for internal revenue agent with the Internal Revenue Service. I got a job there, and I worked as an agent for 31 years.
Wow, and during that time you had a family. Could you tell us how that all took place, where you met your wife?
My family's a long story. I can go back to when I was in the service. I was going with a young girl. We were engaged. I was over in Guam, and I got a Dear John letter. That broke that off. So I came home. I met my wife, Rosie. We married, had 3 children. Unfortunately, 2 were stillborn, but we had a son, John. And then we bought this home in 1950 and lived here until Rosie passed away. And then I think she passed away in 1995, if my recollection is correct. And then I met another young lady, Mary Jane Manarese, another widow. We went together until she passed away, and here I am all alone.
Well, could you share a little bit about what happened with your wife? Did she develop an illness?
She had cancer.
Okay. And your second friend?
She had cancer also.
She had cancer as well. I'm so sorry.
Yes.
So you continued to live here, and you had a son named John. And did John follow in your footsteps and become an accountant?
No, he didn't. He pursued the education department, which I'm very proud of. He, I think he taught for 30-some years in Haddonfield, and now he's teaching as a professor at Rowan.
Okay. So could you share a little bit about what you did as a business after you retired? At what age did you leave your formal profession of accounting?
Well, after I retired from the Internal Revenue Service, my expertise in that department was sought after from other accountants in Vineland who at times would have cases with the Internal Revenue, and they knew that I knew all the workings of the department, so they sort of hired me on a professional basis to represent their clients when they had a hearing before the Internal Revenue.
And how long did you do that job?
Oh, I would say 5 years.
Okay. And then after that, you officially retired?
Officially retired.
Okay.
I did volunteer work after that.
So at this point, how many years have you been officially retired?
Oh, gee. I'm getting my years mixed up now.
You don't have to tell me years, about 30 years maybe?
No, I've been retired longer than I worked. I retired in I've been retired for 40 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you said you got involved in volunteer work. Could you share a little bit about some of those?
Well, yes, being I was in the Navy, I had heard that the battleship New Jersey was berthing up in Camden, New Jersey. It was going to become a museum. And they were advertising for tour guides. So me and a friend of mine, Don Tricano, went up there and took the 6-month course, and we became tour guides on the battleship New Jersey.
And how long have you been doing that?
I did that for 20 years.
So what was it like working as a tour guide there? Did you share experiences that you had during World War II?
Well, when we were taking tour groups around the ship, naturally some of them would ask me, were you in the service or what did you do? And I would relate to them that I was in the Navy I was in the Pacific, and then questions would be going back and forth. What did you do, and what so forth. So just banter back and forth about my time in service.
And are you still volunteering with the battleship now?
I had to give it up because I couldn't climb the ladders anymore.
Okay. So I'm sure that was a great loss for them.
Oh my, I miss it very much. John takes me up there on occasion when they're having some kind of a event. He'll take me up there in his car, and I'll go to the event, but no more on touring.
So I understand you also volunteer in Vineland.
I volunteer at the Baker House. It's an assisted living place. My second lady friend, Mary Jane, after she got sickly, her children put her in this assisted living facility. And I used to stay with her many days and nights while she was recovering from her illness. So she eventually died there. So I became familiar with Baker House and all the people, the elderly people there. And they asked if I wanted to volunteer there, and I said I would love to. And they said, how about playing cards or something? I said, sure. So now I play there every Wednesday rather, and they call it Rummy with Junie.
Oh, and how'd you get the nickname of Junie?
Well, I was in my younger days, I was a junior. So then my junior passed on to my son. He is now junior. John Jr., John Jr.
Oh, that's wonderful. So you've lived an exceptional life.
Oh.
What would you say have been some of the practices that you followed that allowed you to live a healthy life to this age?
Well, I guess through my Navy career, I always learned to eat 3 meals a day. And I still do it today. My family kids me. I eat at 8, 12, and 5. That was our regiment in the Navy. And now I say to my family when we ever have any get-togethers, don't forget, we got to eat at 12. We got to eat at 5. So I attribute my longevity to I never smoked. I never drank, although I had a beer or two at occasion. And I never ran around with a fast woman. So I attribute my life to that.
So what are some of the things that you enjoy doing now besides volunteering?
Well, sports is my life. I mean, without the television, watching the Eagles and the Phillies and the 76ers, that's my life. I mean, without that, I don't know what I would do because I can't get around very much. So sitting in front of the television watching sports.
And how often do you see your son?
My son comes down every weekend. We go out to dinner every weekend. I'm so fortunate that we do that. And I see him occasionally during the week. He'll come down. He has a condo now down in Ventnor, and I hope to go there with him in the summertime once in a while. So, but I see him every week for sure, once a week, but maybe 2 or 3 times a week.
So what advice would you give young people now about maybe considering enlisting?
Well, that would be a personal choice because there's no war raging now. I mean, you'd have to go in if you wanted to pursue some kind of a career, I think, when you got out under the GI Bill. But back then it was, everybody was going into service. I mean, all the boys that graduated school into the service, either drafted or enlisting. So it's a different world today to advise a youngster what to do. But the main thing is to get an education.
Do you have any regrets in your life?
Sure. I mean,
Any you'd like to share?
I don't know. Regrets, I've had a few, but then again, too few to mention, you know. But I guess there's been some regrets, but off the top of my head, I don't know.
Okay. And what would you say are maybe 2 or 3 of the highlights of your life?
Highlights in my life? Well, I was marrying my wife Rose, having my son John. That was the big highlight of our life. I'll tell you, as I said before, we had 3 children. 2 were stillborn. John was the 3rd. I don't know how my wife ever got up the courage to go through a 3rd pregnancy after losing 2 children, but she was a strong woman and said, John, we got to try for another one. And I don't know, I think she deserves the badge of honor.
Oh, that's amazing. Are there any final words you'd like to share with our audience today?
Well, I'd like to say this. America is the greatest country we live in. I was so glad to do my part. I'm not a war hero. Don't get me wrong. I just went into the service just like any other boy back in the day. And I would hope to think that I did my duty well. And I would say this, just lead a clean life, get an education. As Archie Bunker would say, case closed.
Thank you so much,
You're
John.
very welcome. You're very welcome.